May 19th, 1536, 8:47 a.m. A woman who was Queen of England 17 days ago is about to discover whether she'll live through the morning. Anne Boleyn has been waiting for this moment for 4 days, ever since a rigged jury condemned her to death for crimes she didn't commit. But here's what should shock you. The executioner hired to kill her arrived at the Tower of London 6 days ago. 6 days. That means he was summoned before her trial even began. The verdict was decided before a single witness testified. The execution was planned before she was formally accused. In exactly 2 hours and 13 minutes, Anne Boleyn will kneel on a scaffold built specifically for her death. A French swordsman will swing a blade weighing 4 pounds at her neck. If he's skilled, and he'd better be, because this is the first time in English history that a queen has been executed, her head will separate from her body in one clean stroke. If he's not skilled, well, we'll get to that horror later. But first, you need to understand that everything about Anne's final hours was calculated political theater designed to destroy not just her body, but her legacy, her daughter's future, and any woman who might dare to challenge male power in the Tudor court. This is the story of how quickly you can fall from absolute power to public execution, and why the method chosen for Anne's death reveals more about Henry VIII's twisted psychology than any history book admits. Let's start with context most people miss. Execution in Tudor England was a public spectacle designed to terrorize the population into submission. The standard method for commoners was hanging, where victims strangled slowly for up to 20 minutes before death.
A brief end, then.
For traitors, men faced hanging, drawing, and quartering, a process so brutal that describing it fully would violate YouTube guidelines. Let's just say it involved being cut down from hanging while still alive, then having your internal organs removed and burned in front of you before final beheading and dismemberment. For women convicted of treason, the standard method was burning alive, not a quick death. Burning could take 15 to 30 minutes depending on wind conditions and wood quality. Victims often suffocated from smoke inhalation before the flames consumed them, but not always. Sometimes they remained conscious, screaming, as their skin blistered and charred. This was the legal penalty Anne Boleyn faced as a woman convicted of treason against the king. So when Henry VIII's execution warrant specified that Anne would be beheaded by sword instead of burned, Tudor propagandists framed this as extraordinary mercy. The document literally states, "We, moved by pity, not wishing the Lady Anne to be burned, direct the constable of the Tower that on the green within the Tower of London, the said Anne shall have her head cut from her body." Mercy.
I'm here for the
That word should make you furious, because here's what it really meant. Beheading by axe, the standard method for nobility, was itself frequently botched. The executioner's axe weighed about 8 pounds, with a blade deliberately kept somewhat dull, because a razor-sharp edge could glance off bone instead of cutting through. Executioners aimed for the gap between vertebrae, but accuracy varied wildly. Mary Queen of Scots required 3 blows 15 years after Anne's execution. The first blow struck the back of her head. The second blow still didn't fully sever the neck. Only the third blow completed the job, requiring sawing through remaining tissue. The Countess of Salisbury in 1541 experienced even worse. The inexperienced executioner missed entirely on the first swing, striking her shoulder. She stood up and tried to run. Guards had to restrain her while the executioner chased her around the scaffold, hacking at her neck and head repeatedly. Eyewitnesses counted 11 blows before she finally died. 11. Let that sink in. This wasn't ancient history or foreign barbarism. This was England under Henry VIII, the same king now being praised for his mercy toward Anne. So Henry chose a sword instead. Swords, when wielded by skilled executioners, could indeed achieve single-stroke decapitation. The blade's slicing motion, combined with its length and speed, generated enough force to cut through vertebrae cleanly. But this required an expert. England didn't have sword executioners. They had to import one from France. Which brings us back to that damning timeline. The French swordsman was summoned from Saint-Omer in northern France. Let's do the math. That proves Anne's trial was pure theater.
Of these charges.
A messenger would need to travel from London to Dover, approximately 80 miles, taking roughly 2 days by horse, then cross the English Channel, weather permitting, another day. Then ride from Calais to Saint-Omer, about 30 miles, half a day. That's 3 days minimum to deliver the summons. Then the swordsman needs the same 3 days to make the return journey.
My life is in your hands
6 days
now,
total,
Thomas.
at absolute minimum,
And you are
assuming
in mine,
perfect
my
weather
dearest.
and no delays. The swordsman arrived at the Tower on May
Be not
18th.
so grieved,
Count
for
backward
it doth
6
trouble
days.
me not.
That's May 12th. Anne's trial took place on May 15th. She was arrested on May 2nd. So the order to summon the executioner was sent before Anne was even formally accused, let alone tried or convicted. The verdict wasn't determined by evidence.
I am come hither
It was
to
decided by
die,
Thomas Cromwell
for
and
according
Henry
to
VIII
the law,
before
by
the charade
law,
began. Every witness who testified against Anne, every juror who voted guilty, every legal proceeding that appeared to weigh evidence fairly, all of it was predetermined theater. The French swordsman's travel schedule is the smoking gun that proves it. Anne never had a chance. Her fate was sealed the moment Henry decided he wanted Jane Seymour and needed Anne eliminated. Everything else was just paperwork and performance designed to make regicide look like justice. Now let's talk about the
Do not be
psychological
afraid,
torture of
Anne.
Anne's final days.
The Lord
Because
is
the
with you.
physical
He will give you
execution was
strength
just the
and peace.
finale of sustained mental torment. Anne was tried on May 15th and convicted that same
Look
day.
how they treat her.
The sentence was death,
God is
to be carried out at
God
the
save
king's
us all.
pleasure. That phrase is crucial because it meant Anne had no idea when execution would occur. She was told to prepare for death, but the specific timing was deliberately kept vague to maximize psychological suffering. May 17th, morning. Anne is told she'll be executed that day. She receives final communion, says farewell to her ladies, and waits. Hours pass. Nothing happens. Evening arrives. Suddenly, she's informed the execution is postponed until the next day. Why? Official records claim they needed to clear unauthorized people from the tower, but Anne didn't know that. She spent an entire day believing she would die, preparing mentally and spiritually, only to have that certainty yanked away. May 18th, morning, the same scenario repeats. Anne receives communion again, certain this is her final morning. She waits. Hours pass. Again, nothing happens. Again, evening brings postponement until the following day. Imagine the psychological devastation. You've accepted death, made peace with it, said your goodbyes. Then you're told to wait another day, then another. Each postponement resurrects desperate hope that maybe, somehow, Henry will change his mind.
For he has
Then
ever
crushes
been
that
to me
hope
a
again.
gracious sovereign
This wasn't
and
accident
a most
or
kind
logistics.
master.
This was deliberate cruelty. Sir William Kingston, Constable of the Tower, documented Anne's mental state in letters to Thomas Cromwell. He wrote, "I have seen many men and also women executed, and all they have been in great sorrow. But, to my knowledge, this lady has
You
much
stand
joy and
accused
pleasure
of
in
high
death."
treason against
That
the
description
crown.
has confused historians for centuries. How could Anne
Sancta
show joy
Maria,
facing
ora
execution?
pro nobis.
The answer reveals her psychological state after days of torture. Anne wasn't experiencing joy. She was experiencing the emotional
Your
numbness
Grace,
and dissociation
welcome to
that
Chelsea.
accompanies severe trauma.
My dear
Her
girl.
laughter and apparent cheerfulness were
You
coping
bring light
mechanisms,
back
her
into
mind
my
protecting
life.
itself from unbearable reality by disconnecting emotion from circumstance. Modern psychology recognizes this as a trauma response. Tudor observers interpreted it as supernatural composure, or possibly madness. Kingston also noted that Anne's mood swung wildly between despair and hope.
Good Christian
One moment
people,
she'd
I
be
am
joking
come
with her
hither
ladies,
to die.
the next she'd be
I
weeping.
pray God save the
Then
king and send
she'd
him
be
long.
calmly discussing her execution as if planning a dinner party. These aren't the moods of someone at peace. These are the moods of someone whose mind is fragmenting under intolerable stress. The 2-day delay transformed Anne's mental state from acceptance to this volatile psychological breakdown, oscillating between hope that Henry would pardon her and despair that he wouldn't. And through it all, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer paced his garden at Lambeth Palace 2 miles upriver, torn apart by the knowledge that Anne was innocent but powerless to save her. Cranmer knew Anne better than perhaps anyone at court because he served as her personal confessor. In Catholicism and early Protestantism, confession wasn't optional. It was mandatory for receiving communion and achieving salvation. If Anne had committed adultery with 5 men, including her own brother, if she had genuinely conspired to murder the king, she would have confessed those sins to Cranmer to achieve forgiveness before death. Catholics and Protestants both believed dying in a state of unconfessed mortal sin meant eternal damnation. Anne was deeply religious. She wouldn't risk her immortal soul by refusing to confess genuine sins.
You are safe now,
Cranmer
Anne.
knew this. So when
Be
Anne
grateful,
maintained her
Thomas.
innocence to him privately,
My mercy
he believed
today
her,
is
absolutely.
absolute.
Yet Cranmer had already
not
granted
test
Henry's
it
request to
tomorrow.
annul the marriage 3
By
days
the grace
prior,
of the court,
declaring it null
the
and
condemned
void
shall
from the
receive
beginning.
the swift mercy
This
of the
made
axe,
Elizabeth,
a
Anne,
clean
and Henry's
strike
daughter
to cleanse
legally
the
a
soul.
bastard with no claim to the throne. Cranmer's anguish was compounded the night before Anne's execution, when his friend Alexander Alexius arrived at Lambeth Palace in a disturbed state. Alexius reported having a vision or nightmare, he wasn't certain which, in which he saw Anne's severed neck in grotesque detail, able to count individual nerves, veins, and arteries. Cranmer, hearing this, looked to the sky and declared, "She who has been Queen of England upon earth will today become a queen in heaven."
It's all right,
He'd
my
lost
lady.
all hope that
You are
Henry would
safe
grant
now.
mercy.
It was
May
just
19th,
a dream.
dawn. Anne rises for what she knows will be the last time. Her ladies dress her, and here Anne demonstrates her final act of strategic thinking. Clothing in Tudor England was a language. Every fabric, color, and cut communicated status, allegiance, and message. Anne, famous for her extravagant French fashion sense, for her love of rich fabrics, bold colors, and cutting-edge continental styles, makes a deliberate choice to dress down. She chooses a red kirtle, essentially an underdress, made of simple fabric. Red was common among peasants. It symbolized humility, the color of every woman, not a
I
queen's
regret to
exclusive
inform you,
finery.
madam.
Over
Your
this, she
final
wears a
appeal
gown
has
of
been
dark gray or
rejected.
black, colors associated with piety, sobriety, and legal professionals. No
Sweet
jewels,
Jesus,
no elaborate
receive
decoration.
my spirit.
This is Anne attempting to project
Grant
innocence
us
and
peace in
humility
this
to the
hour
crowd
of
that will
trial.
witness her death. She's using clothing to argue her case one final time when words have failed. Even her choice to wear English rather than French styles is calculated. Anne had been criticized throughout her queenship as too French, too foreign, too other. By dressing in simpler, more traditionally English fashion for her execution, she's trying to claim English identity, to remind observers that she's one of them, not an exotic foreigner who bewitched the king. Every detail of her outfit is a silent plea for sympathy and a testimony to her innocence, but clothing can't save her now. At approximately 8 a.m.,